throws it open during days of glazed frost or heavier snowfall, he immediately sees the increase of his horde. Almost all free grass-eating animals, and many rodents in Asia and America being in very much the same conditions, we can safely say that their numbers are not kept down by competition, that at no time of the year they can struggle for food, and that if they never reach anything approaching to overpopulation, the cause is in the climate, not in competition. The importance of natural checks to overmultiplication, and especially their bearing upon the competition hypothesis, seems never to have been taken into due account. The checks, or rather, some of them are mentioned, but their action is seldom studied in detail. However, if we compare the action of the natural checks with that of competition, we must recognize at once that the latter sustains no comparison whatever with the other checks. Thus Mr. Bates mentions the really astounding numbers of winged ants which are destroyed during the exodus. The dead or half-dead bodies of the Formica de Fuego (Myrmicaceae viscima), which had been blown into the river during a gale, were heaped in a line an inch or two in height and breadth, the line continuing without interruption for miles at the edge of the water. The naturalist on the river Amazons, 2nd, 85-95. Myriads of ants are thus destroyed amidst a nature which might support 100 times as many ants as are actually living. Dr. Altum, a German forester, who wrote a very interesting book about animals injurious to our forests, also gives many facts showing the immense importance of natural checks. He says that a succession of gales or cold and damp weather during the exodus of the pine moth (Bombyx spini) destroy it to incredible amounts, and during the spring of 1871 all these moths disappeared at once, probably killed by a succession of cold nights. Dr. B. Altum, Wahlbeschädigungen der Tiere und Gegenmittel (Berlin 1889), pages 207, sequence. Many like examples relative to various insects could be quoted from various parts of Europe. Dr. Altum also mentions the bird enemies of the pine moth, and the immense amount of its eggs destroyed by foxes, but he adds that the parasitic fungi which periodically infest it are a far more terrible enemy than any bird, because they destroy the moth over very large areas at once. As to various species of mice (Mus sylvaticus, Orvicola orvalis, and A. agrestis), the same author gives a long list of their enemies, but he remarks: however, the most terrible enemies of mice are not other animals, but such sudden changes of weather as occur almost every year. Alternations of frost and warm weather destroy them in numberless quantities. One single sudden change can reduce thousands of mice to the number of a few individuals. On the other side, a warm winter, or a winter which gradually steps in, make them multiply in menacing proportions, notwithstanding every enemy. Such was the case in 1876 and 1877. Dr. B. Altum, Ut Supra, pages 13 and 187. Competition in the case of mice thus appears a quite trifling factor when compared with weather. Other facts to the same effect are also given as regards squirrels. As to birds, it is well known how they suffer from sudden changes of weather. Late snowstorms are as destructive of bird life on the English moors as they are in Siberia, and C.H. Dixon saw the red grouse suppressed during some exceptionally severe winters that they quitted the moors in numbers, and we have then known them actually to be taken in the streets of Sheffield. Persistent wet, he adds, is almost as fatal to them. On the other side, the contagious diseases which continually visit most animal species destroy them in such numbers that the losses often cannot be repaired for many years, even with the most rapidly multiplying animals. Thus, some 60 years ago, the suslik suddenly disappeared in the neighborhood of Sarepta in southeastern Russia, in consequence of some epidemics, and for years no susliks were seen in that neighborhood. It took many years before they became as numerous as they formerly were. A. Baker, in the Bulletin de la Société des Naturalistes de Moscou, 1889, page 625. Close footnote. Like facts, all tending to reduce the importance given to competition, could be produced in numbers. Of course, it might be replied, in Darwin's words, that nevertheless each organic being at some period of its life, during some season of the year, during each generation or at intervals, has to struggle for life and to suffer great destruction, and that the fittest survive during such periods of hard struggle for life. But if the evolution of the animal world were based exclusively or even chiefly upon the survival of the fittest during periods of calamities, if natural selection were limited in its action to periods of exceptional drought or sudden changes of temperature or inundations, retrogression would be the rule in the animal world. Those who survive a famine or a severe epidemic of cholera or smallpox or diphtheria, such as we see them in uncivilized countries, are neither the strongest nor the healthiest, nor the most intelligent. No progress could be based on those survivors, the less so as all survivors usually come out of the ordeal with an impaired health, like the Transbaikalian horses just mentioned, or the Arctic cruise, or the garrison of a fortress which has been compelled to live for a few months on half rations, and comes out of its experience with broken health, and subsequently shows a quite abnormal mortality. All that natural selection can do in times of calamities is to spare the individuals endowed with the greatest endurance for privations of all kinds. So it does among the Siberian horses and cattle. They are enduring, they can feed upon the polar birch in case of need, they resist cold and hunger, but no Siberian horse is capable of carrying half the weight which a European horse carries with ease. No Siberian cow gives half the amount of milk given by a Jersey cow, and no natives of uncivilized countries can bear a comparison with Europeans. They may better endure hunger and cold, but their physical force is very far below that of a well-fed European, and their intellectual progress is despairingly slow. Evil cannot be productive of good, as Chernyshevsky wrote in a remarkable essay upon Darwinism. Open footnote. Ruskaya, Mysl, September 1888. The theory of beneficency of struggle for life, being a preface to various treatises on botanics, zoology, and human life, by an old transformist. Close footnote. Happily enough, competition is not the rule either in the animal world or in mankind. It is limited among animals to exceptional periods, and natural selection finds better fields for its activity. Better conditions are created by the elimination of competition by means of mutual aid and mutual support. Open footnote. One of the most frequent modes in which natural selection acts is by adapting some individuals of a species to a somewhat different mode of life, whereby they are able to seize unappropriated places in nature. Origin of species, page 145, in other words, to avoid competition. In the great struggle for life, for the greatest possible fullness and intensity of life, with the least waste of energy, natural selection continually seeks out the ways precisely for avoiding competition as much as possible. The ants combine in nests and nations, they pile up their stores, they rear their cattle, and thus avoid competition, and natural selection picks out of the ants' family the species which know best how to avoid competition, with its unavoidably deleterious consequences. Most of our birds slowly move southwards as the winter comes, or gather in numberless societies and undertake long journeys, and thus avoid competition. Many rodents fall asleep when the time comes that competition should set in, while other rodents store food for the winter and gather in large villages for obtaining the necessary protection when at work. The reindeer, when the lichens are dry in the interior of a continent, migrate towards the sea. Buffaloes cross an immense continent in order to find plenty of food, and the beavers, when they grow numerous on a river, divide into two parties and go, the old ones down the river and the young ones up the river, and avoid competition. And when animals can neither fall asleep, nor migrate, nor lay in stores, nor themselves grow their food like the ants, they do what the titmouse does, and what Wallace (Darwinism, chapter 5) has so charmingly described. They resort to new kinds of food, and thus again avoid competition. Don't compete. Competition is always injurious to the species, and you have plenty of resources to avoid it. That is the tendency of nature, not always realized in full, but always present. That is the watchword which comes to us from the bush, the forest, the river, the ocean. Therefore combine, practice mutual aid. That is the surest means for giving to each and to all the greatest safety, the best guarantee of existence and progress, bodily, intellectual and moral. That is what nature teaches us, and that is what all those animals which have attained the highest position in their respective classes have done. That is also what man, the most primitive man, has been doing, and that is why man has reached the position upon which we stand now, as we shall see in the subsequent chapters devoted to mutual aid in human societies. End of the second part of chapter 2. Recording by Enko. If you would like to send me an email, you can reach me at enkobilal@yahoo.com. That's